This is a treat. In just a moment, we're going to have the Dallas Express CEO, Chris Putnam, on the show, and we're going to talk about so much stuff that is all over the news. He's got a lot of the in-depth insight and such. He's going to CPAC a little later, so we're going to talk about whether or not Epic City is ever going to be stopped. We're going to talk about AKA the Meadows, the Muslim city. We're going to talk about if Kaufman's Sustainable City, the other Muslim city, supposedly is being stopped. I'm skeptical, and we'll talk about that. Also, the Islamization of our schools. As you know, tons of stuff I've been getting on Wiley ISD, and it's worse. So stuff is going viral that I've gotten my hands on. We'll get into that in a minute, but the Dallas Wings wanting our money, taxpayer dollars. Cesar Chavez, Talarico, Paxton, Cornyn, et al. Here we go. But first, this show is brought to you by IRSprob.com. Randy Martin is going to be a guest in a little bit, too, to give you tax tips and tell you what the latest is that you need to know in the news with taxes and such. But go to IRSprob.com, IRSprob.com, helping good people with IRS problems, specializing in IRS controversy, IRS audits, and tax planning strategies. And now we get to talk to the Dallas Express CEO, Chris Putnam. How are you?
Great, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to have you on the show. It's a long time coming.
Thanks so much.
Oh, yeah, you're very welcome. Here's one of the coolest things in the world with you is, an example yesterday, I talked about this on my podcast yesterday. The Dallas Morning News told us about this LGBTQ guy in the neighborhood, as they call it, in Oak Lawn. And they openly call it that, and he was arrested for trying to redo the sidewalks after the governor ordered them taken down. Of course, Kimberly Beiser Tolbert, the city manager of Dallas, pleaded and tried to, get an exemption. But when the Dallas Morning News reported, they talked about this poor man who was just trying to paint a crosswalk back to LGBTQ, and that he was arrested. But if you didn't read the Dallas Express, you didn't know that he had 2 felony warrants out for his arrest out of Farmers Branch. So, Dallas Morning News, he's an innocuous young man who's fighting for gay rights. Dallas Express, he's running on 2 felony warrants.
Yeah, I always tell people the truth is sacrosanct to us, right? And regardless of what story we're publishing or the subject of a story, we're going to get it right and give people all the information. And we see this all the time where what I call the lying legacy media outlets, they simply will non-report facts about a story. And of course, you've seen this time and time again. We saw it with a lot of these ICE attacks in Minnesota. And look, let people draw their own conclusions, but share all the information.
Right. And that's one example of the difference. I want to talk to you about something that is all over our news, your news as well. Sustainable City USA, which is C Holdings LLC, a Muslim company out of a Muslim nation, Dubai, UAE, building 3 or 4 or 5 cities in Muslim countries that are Muslim cities, really, with a mosque in the middle of it. And then they're going to come here and build, as the Dallas Express reported yesterday, 14 times larger of a city that may, Attorney General Ken Paxton talking about it could be 20,000 foreign nationals moving into our cities. Now, I'm going to say this. You know this, and I know this. The Congressman Lance Gooden has come out and said that it's over. He talked to them, and they, quote unquote, told him it's over. But forgive me for not taking the word of a politician who says, hey, guys, I talked to him. Who's they, said it's over. I am not taking the word of one guy who's a Republican, albeit, who says I talked to them until I know who is them. What is their name? What is their title? What's their, information to contact? And second of all, I want a piece of paper that says from them on their letterhead, it's over. We're not going to be in Kaufman. We're not going to be in anywhere in DFW or Texas. Tell me if I'm being too skeptical, and tell me what the Dallas Express and about the city they're trying to build in Kaufman County.
Probably a lot of what you know. In fact, it goes back to when, frankly, a lot of politicians recruited these developments. Wow. And I like to believe sincerely that these politicians at the time, whether it's Governor Abbott or others, and he was involved in that one early on, just were not aware of the real intent of these developments. And of course, recently in the last, let's call it 6 months or so, the governor and other elected officials have gotten increasingly vocal and in taking steps to prevent them, including at the federal level. Scott Turner, who runs the Housing and Urban Development Department, are prosecuting them on the basis of Fair Housing Act. They're being discriminatory because they're not allowing non-Muslims to buy into these communities. And so I want to believe that, and I don't know if there's naivety or at that point people just didn't realize that their real purpose and agenda were to move into these communities, which are historically very non-Muslim. A lot of them are in rural areas like the Kaufman area, and effectively take over the local governments. And they do it in a very underhanded way. In this case, they're using the municipal utility district and changing the composition of the board of that MUD district in order to achieve that political outcome. But it's about political outcomes for them.
So I also have a theory, and this kind of segues us. So you don't blame me for being skeptical that it's officially over?
I don't. And I know Congressman Gooden well, actually. I would consider him a friend. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But, what Reagan said, let's trust but verify.
Yeah, and what I said last night, I actually channeled that phrase last night, and I said, I don't trust, and I want to verify. I mean, taking the word of one politician. When's the last time we did that and everything went fine when nothing's on paper?
With some of these groups in particular, you should be very skeptical because again, there's a lot of deceptive practices that they use and entertain to accomplish these things.
So, Chris, I also think this. I think that they come into smaller communities like in Kaufman or in rural Collins/Hunt, like Epic City, aka the Meadows, because they can put money in the pockets of the local politicians and roll over them. Thoughts?
Yeah. No, we've seen it firsthand. Epic City is an example. We were actually at their candidate forum, which got a little viral last month because one of the individuals they invited was a Republican candidate for Congress, and Congressional District 32 happens to be of Iranian heritage. In fact, his family immigrated here during the revolution.
Yes.
And he wasn't having it. and that room just exploded. Yes. And one of the candidates, who I believe is perhaps a candidate in the general election, I apologize because I don't know his name off the top of my head. He got up and just put a warm embrace around them. Said, I'm with you guys all the way.
Right.
And of course, we've seen that same example in Minnesota, with the mayor up there. And so I just don't think that's even a question. I don't think that's speculation. I think that's precisely what's going on. Yeah,
and I saw that viral moment where you guys caught it on tape, and the Iranian American candidate for Texas 32nd said that Sharia law is bad. It treats these women here are treated like cattle under Sharia law. I'm against it. And people went nuts, and a man had to be restrained.
He was Abtine Vaziri was the candidate, and he was actually, and we had a reporter there. Both were actually frightened about getting out of the room, and basically all they did was oppose the narrative, about these Epic City in particular. And in that case, Vaziri was very vocal about his own experience in Iran, and not being consistent with what we're all about culturally.
Right. So I was in Kaufman County when they canceled that meeting a few weeks ago, and nobody knew anything. I showed up there. A lot of people showed up there, and we saw these little signs pasted on the door. I put it up on my podcast and all that stuff. We canceled the meeting, and it was nebulous. That's all that was, but nothing public that anybody was aware of. So we go to the Epic City. I went to the Epic City, the Meadows meeting that was happening this past Friday, and that blew the heck up too when I went there and did some stuff. And TPUSA was there, Savannah Hernandez. She interviewed me and some other people, and they canceled that one. Now, most of us knew this probably wasn't going to happen because, as you know, there's a TRO, temporary restraining order, right now on Epic City, a.k.a. the Meadows. And they couldn't do much at all other than maybe listen to us. But they canceled it, peeved off a lot of people. Chris, I went to there and I saw this big mosque, and I'm putting it up on the podcast picture. Well, I've shown it. It's enough. The question I have is a couple things. Number one, I see no assimilation. There are. I took pictures. I put it up on the show and all this stuff. There are Muslim, Arabic strip malls. There are every house in the entire neighborhoods there are all Muslim. Every single one of them appear to be Muslim. There's tons of money, And then you see this mosque and you're saying, first of all, so I saw no assimilation. Number two, why is this mosque standing there in front of it? I said, why is this mosque building a city? And what would happen if my church, First Baptist Dallas, for example, said, we're building a city and we're going to have a church in the middle of it, a retirement community.
And prevented everybody but Christians from being a part of it.
Yes,
from
because
owning
as you know,
property
the materials that they distributed were saying, Muslims and Muslim this and Muslim that, and it was to keep out non-Muslims, kafirs like you and me, So, what are your thoughts on this? Where is this going? And have you seen the same thing with the no assimilation in this area? Talk to me on what your thoughts are on all this.
Well, yeah, I think that's the fundamental issue here, and why people are rightfully concerned. Again, within the some of the statements that they've made publicly and within the caliphate, they've been very clear that they hate everything that we're about.
Yes.
And so they're using it as an opportunity to create disruption in our own communities. You would think that in Texas this wouldn't fly. I hope it won't, but we were a little late getting to it, frankly. Our elected leaders allowed it in, and now they're scrambling to kind of undo the mess they created. And it's very much like the H1 issue in the assimilation sense. I don't think anybody has a problem with people of other cultures or religions, moving into their communities. But when they create their own communities and they fail to assimilate, and it fractures, a lot of these communities in terms of the fabric of them. And people wake up and they don't recognize their own communities. And you have an entire group of people who share completely different values. And it's just very damaging that way.
Absolutely. So when you said we're a little late on the game with Epic City, for example, aka the Meadows, who is it that let them in?
Texas, of course, is famous for economic development. One of the great things about our state, we have a low regulatory environment compared to most states, no state income tax, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that a lot of politicians just look for any and all opportunities, to bring a lot of people here for a lot of different reasons. And on the surface, I don't think anybody has the intent to discriminate against anybody individually. And they were just slow to catch on to the real objective here, which was to take these communities over politically and then metastasize that. And to me, that's what's happened.
To me, it's like a future no-go zone in 10, 20 years. We see in Dearborn, Michigan, Islamic Arabic writing on the uniforms of police officers. That is beyond assimilation, not assimilation. That is taking over and saying we are now a Muslim area, period. Versus America, very
Precisely.
concerning.
It's to the point now in, areas like far north Dallas, Frisco, McKinney. Yeah. It's moving further upward, that people are getting really loud about it. And the one thing politicians don't like, of course, is when their constituents are unhappy. And so it's not a surprise to me that they want to kind of quiet the noise. But to your point, I think it's really important that the leaders of these communities, or community leaders, doesn't have to be elected officials, really keep a close eye on what's going on and keep their elected officials in check and force their elected officials to do everything possible within the law, not outside the law, within the law, to ensure that they are not creating these discriminatory communities, or there's something even more untoward going on where they're flatly trying to take them over.
Right. Let me share this with you going to the schools. Two things. I don't know if you caught Texas Scorecard. You guys seem to do a little trading back and forth on some intel, right?
Yeah, we absolutely collaborate with Texas Scorecard.
Absolutely. I like that very much that you do. Michael Quinn Sullivan, as you know who he is, I'm connected with him too, and he's a great guy. But he did a story, he did it himself, on Iranian-linked Islamic school now eligible for Texas school choice funds. Brighter Horizons Academy in Garland. They have a top Hamas official that is connected, that works there. The school's founder is a man who served on the board of the Holy Land Foundation, which is the largest ever terrorism fundraising case in U.S. history. Richardson-based Holy Land Foundation, you know about this, where the CARE is an unindicted co-conspirator in that case. CARE sued to get their name removed. They
were laundering money back to terrorist groups.
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes.
No, that's it. They were laundering. It was a very famous case here in Dallas, of course.
Yes. Yes. And I remember when I got here 16 years ago, I was stunned when I did my work and the research, and the FBI and the Department of Justice said that CARE was in a hotel room in Boston with Holy Land Foundation officials saying we need to wage jihad, a nonviolent jihad where we use the laws and the freedoms of this country and the media to turn this country against itself so that we can take over. I mean, people don't believe it. It's unreal. And they raised between $5 and $7 million.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, they say it out loud. And like when people tell you what they're doing, maybe you should believe them.
Yes. Thank you. And that's the biggest thing. What I'm saying, I'm going to shift now but this school in Garland is now on the list to receive funds, and they're affiliated with the Islamic Services Foundation, which produces and distributes textbook from Islamic schools throughout the U.S. Several of them are reviewed by the Middle East Forum, teach young children open hatred towards non-Muslims. And then one of the teachers is the niece of a Hamas leader and her father's a convicted terrorist collaborator. What the hell's going on here? Right?
Well, we were told that this was going to happen, of course, with this particular school choice bill. A lot of us knew that there were personally, I'm a school choice supporter.
Me too.
I believe we're at it's very early days, and there's a lot of refinement that has to be done to that bill and others going forward in order to get to where we really need to be. But at the same time, just like your example of politicians telling you one thing and not verifying, like we were told this wouldn't happen. And look, if we're going to use these funds for Christian schools, then fair enough. But what we can't do is allow these funds to be used for schools that have those kind of ties to terrorist organizations.
Right.
And so in this case, now what we're being told is that, these two got through this larger blockade of these types of schools that the governor's been bragging about because they don't have those ties. And so we're investigating this ourselves. And if in fact they do have the ties that you just mentioned, then they need to be reconsidered.
Yes. Now, I want to share with you, let's shift over to Wiley ISD. I was just there 2 nights ago for their school board meeting. I was there a month earlier. You're very familiar with this, undoubtedly. That
through your work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, my brother. So 4 adult Muslim professional proselytizers were allowed into Wiley East High School. They brought in Qurans, hijabs, candy, and understanding Sharia pamphlets and bags from Why Islam, called From Why Islam, the group that they work for. They first of all, you have to sign, and I've got copies of the forms. I've showed it on my socials and on my podcast last night. 3 people have to sign off to let guests come in, and one of them is the principal, Tiffany Doolin, who a year earlier on World Hijab Day wore a hijab and in all caps put, "I loved it," and tweeted that out or put it out on her Instagram, her official Instagram. 1 year later, World Hijab Day is on Sunday, so on Monday, that's when these adult professional proselytizers were allowed in. The teachers, the principal is supposedly, nobody was fired. 1 month later, after this blew up and we all went to the school board meeting a month ago, 1 month later we go back, no one's been fired. They blame it on one low-level person at the front desk who was just given a slap on the wrist, and the principal has to sign off. I've showed the forms. Her name is on there. You can't let somebody in the building that has been signed off. No security checks, no sponsor, which also you have to have a teacher, as you know, for these groups, have a sponsor. No teacher's name on there. This is insane. Let me tell you something else we learned. This, we just got this, and I put this up today, and it's blowing up. It's called a Shahada card. A Shahada card is in every Quran they passed out in the middle of that damn school on that day, okay? And what it does is it teaches you how to pray to become a Muslim. And I'll just read you the line here that they put on here. The Shahada card. To become a Muslim, one needs to make the following declaration. I bear witness there is no God worthy of worship, blah, blah, blah. And it says, I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God. So that's what they passed out to our children, a Shahada card. Number 2, they're serving halal. I put that menu out on my feed last night and on my podcast. They're literally serving halal meals in the schools. Separately, I know I'm sorry I'm going off here. I want to get your comments, your thoughts, and tie it into what you know and what you've seen with the Dallas Express. Separately, in that same district, an 8th grader was giving a Quran to an 8th grade girl in the middle class with candy, with a book on for younger people to understand the Quran, and with Arabic tracing saying, I want you to learn Arabic and read the Quran with me. That was in the middle class. Separately, Cooper Junior High School, another middle school, teachers were feted with food by Muslim women who came in. They served them Ramadan food. They passed out pamphlets and books on how to teach Islamic kids, how to teach an Islamic kid. So this is in one district, Chris. So what is going on, and what are we seeing all around the Metroplex with this going on in our freaking schools?
Well, as I mentioned before, as it related to the community developments, it's all very purposeful. And you would have to be unbelievably intellectually dishonest not to watch what's happening and understand that it's purposeful. And look, we have enough problems in our public schools already. I mean,
Yes.
as you know, we have a pedo epidemic going on. It's literally
Yes.
one or two or multiple incidents every
Yes.
single day of children being
Yes.
groomed and sexually assaulted,
Yes.
by folks that are in positions of authority in our public schools. And
Yes.
that's another one that the politicians really run from because it's a tough subject. And of course, the public school lobbies are so big and influential. I mean, you saw what we had to do to even get this first step of school
Forward.
choice passed.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and then and then they, the tactics that they use are the predictable ones. If you challenge this idea in any way that our children should be exposed to this, you're a racist or a xenophobe, or pick a label. They're
Yes.
good at using all of them, and then they try to put you in that box. The good news is that stuff doesn't play quite like it used to, as but it does in some cases with these sorts of issues feel a lot like the early days of DEI, where we're basically told,
Yes.
look, we must comply.
Yes.
We must comply. And of course, folks woke up to that. What I'm hoping is happening here is we caught it soon enough. Whether we're talking about the communities or these activities in our schools,
Right.
we caught it soon enough. And there's been so much noise around these issues that, just like your example with Congressman Gooden, like they can't ignore it. They're
Right.
going to have to address it. And the problem is then, are those elected officials, and I'm not suggesting in any way Congressman Gooden is, but are they conflicted in the way that you describe? They're receiving huge donations from these groups. I mean, we've seen that everywhere, including in South Lake in the last SD9 election, where one of the Republicans in that race was taking big amounts of money from a lot of Indian donors, and in that city, 20% plus of the population now is East Indian. And,
Oh, wow.
and we're working on a story right now, an investigative story about how one individual in that district, or the community, sorry,
Yes.
an Indian fellow is, basically doing all these community events, charity events. The money never shows up where it's supposed to. But they're banking this money to use for political activities.
Wow.
And so it's about keeping the pressure on elected officials in a positive, productive way. We don't want to do it in a negative way. And again, we want
Right.
to do everything within the law
Right.
to ensure that, our communities are protected.
Yes, that's
And
exactly the word.
I think
Protected.
Yeah, protected. And look, our constitutional American values are protected because, as you know, a lot of Sharia law and a lot of what happens in the Islamic culture is not consistent with that in any way.
Hey,
And
Chris,
so people should not be afraid to push back on this
Yes.
idea that, it's a racial issue or a religious issue. It's not.
yeah, the way they try to shut us down by calling us an Islamophobe, a xenophobe, all sorts of stuff, and it's all BS. That's one of the things too. Is what can we do? Can you stand by for a second? I gotta pause for a moment for a few quick commercials, but I want to continue to talk to you about this and some other things that are really important, including your coverage today of this woman who's alleging she was brutalized by Hearst police on that stop. That is so comical after what we all saw on the body cam. Can you stand by, sir, for a quick second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Chris Putnam, the Dallas Express CEO. It's the first place I go to when I do my prep online. But first, I want to tell you that IRSprob.com is one of my sponsors, IRSprob.com. Randy Martin has been my CPA for over 9 years and for my business. And tax planning, if you have tax issues, the most important thing is if you are a good person having tax problems, you go to Randy Martin from IRSprob.com, and he will take care of you. The most pristine and excellent work. And when I first went to Randy my first year, over 9 years ago, he hands me this packet. It looked amazing. It was like a book report. That's the kind of work they do, helping good people with IRS problems, specializing in IRS controversy, IRS audits, and tax planning strategies. Use my guy. He's local, right at the Beltline and the North Dallas North Tollway, Randy Martin, IRSprob.com. I also want to tell you about Jim Dutton, who is the host of Texas Home Improvement on radio and television locally. He is the owner of Due West Foundation in Plumbing. Jim is the reason I bought this house because when I first moved in this house, before I bought the house, I had Due West Foundation and Plumbing inspect my house. They inspected the foundation, approved it, said I had to do some things, but it was very minimal. They also inspected the plumbing and did a static test, and they approved it. Everything that's been done in plumbing in this house is from Due West Foundation Plumbing and Repair. Don't use separate plumbers and foundation. Use both of them. They do concrete leveling. They do root shields. They do land, what do you call it, grading, and everything plumbing in my house. Call them at 972-406-0912. 967-406-0912 or due-west.com. If you want the best, call Due West. And by the way, for Randy Martin at irsprob.com, you call him at 214-214-3000. He'll be on the show a little bit later. Let's go back to Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express. Thank you very much, Chris, for standing by, my friend. So many people ask me, and I'm sure they ask you, what can we do? What can we do to stop the Islamic takeover of our schools, or the Islamic takeover of our communities? Again, it's about assimilation. We're not seeing that, and it's about taking over versus assimilating. What can we do?
Well, the first thing is all politics is local, as you know, and it starts with electing the right people to your school boards, and that's hard. Frankly, a lot of folks increasingly are moving their kids to private schools or homeschools or charter schools. They've just become exhausted, with dealing with the system. And, liberals, the far left in particular, they focus on three things all the time: education, the courts, and the media. And they've dominated in all of those areas. And it's a big reason why we've run into a lot of these problems, right? I mean, I live it every day in the media. And, and when you threaten their grasp or their hold on those institutions, they react viscerally. And I happen to, have come from Northeast Tarrant County, Colleyville in particular, where I was elected official. Yes. And what goes on in the school district up there, which they share with Grapevine, is just crazy. They were successful ultimately getting a rational school board elected, and yet the far left just fights you like crazy. Yes. I mean, they'll do it. They do it with lawfare. They do it by impugning people's character. Yes. And calling people names, all these historic cancel tactics that the far left has used. And these are non-paid positions. These are volunteer positions. Right. People just want good schools, and people want to be proud of their schools. They want to be proud of their communities. Right. And so at some point, the folks that have tried just become exhausted of dealing with it because they're relentless. But in these rural areas, you would think, places like Wiley even, right? You would think that, there's a more rational voter base out there, a residency base that, wants those same things and can understand these tactics. But that's the thing. They don't always understand the tactics of the far left because they can be insidious. Yes. And very devious, in fact.
Let me tell you this about the... Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, that was, I mean, in these groups that they're representing are, trying to create platforms for in these communities are the same way. And so it's not a fair fight in that respect. The most important thing is that people are aware of it. They get the right people elected to those school boards and involve actively their state legislators. And to the extent that there's a federal issue, of course, their Congress people.
You're getting some fans. Marcos Lopez is one of the parents over there at Wiley East, is saying he's going to start following you right now. Folks commenting.
Appreciate that.
Doing the show. So, for example, Wiley ISD, the school board members there claim they're more conservative, but they're letting the Muslim invasion happen, and they're doing nothing. They're not firing that principal who completely, according to parents, students, and myself, she's responsible for that, clearly, in my opinion.
That's it. By the way, Chris, that's another real challenge. And when you're talking about these issues in public education, I mean, unlike most professions, these people have contracts. They're very difficult to get rid of. Incredibly difficult, unless they've just flatly broken some law or flat out sexually assaulted a child. Right. And even in that case, a lot of those incidents, as you know, often go non-reported, and they're attempted to cover them up, like we saw in Salina. And so, just again, this is part of the real challenge, because the public school system at the end of the day is a monopoly. They have 100% of our tax money that they're using to protect these institutions, and they're just absolutely manic about ensuring that citizen representatives, citizen servants don't come in there and disrupt you know, their own plan or their own group that they've had this grip on for so long.
So let's talk about the Dallas Wings. Nobody.
This is the most ridiculous thing.
This is hold on, because I've been saying for however many years anybody's been mentioning them in the news. It's the whole thing is a DEI welfare program, as far as I'm concerned. So when I've been talking about that, the only thing, if you say, hey, how about them Dallas Wings? Or hey, the Dallas Wings, they go, that sounds like good. Let's eat that tonight. Let's get some wings. You want to go to Wingstop? I mean, nobody knows about these people. And what we do know about them is that they bend the knee, they kneel when the pledge is done, not always, but most of them. They're super woke, they despise us, they love BLM. And nobody likes them, and there are many of them, not trying to be nasty, but many of them are radical, leftist LGBTQ people. And that's, by the way, as you know, that's why Joe Biden freed Brittany Griner, because she's African-American and she's gay. Otherwise, she'd still be sitting in a Russian prison, back in the day with that. So my point is,
are we sure she's a she?
Yeah. Well, Brittany Griner? Well, yeah, I mean, it could be, I don't know. I'm not going to check downstairs over there, sir. What did you say? Did you say, are you sure she's a he? What did you say?
No, she's a she.
Yes.
I mean, I've seen reports to the contrary. I don't know
you have.
myself. Like, oh yeah.
Michael Hussein Obama. Hey, Barack, let's pull over. I got to use a urinal. Michael,
I don't know about that one, but there's sure some funny videos out there.
Yes, there are. There was one with a workout, and something was popping down there. All right, we gotta go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, so I'm a City of Dallas resident and taxpayer, and we're constantly being told that we don't have enough money to hire adequate number of police. Like response times in Dallas are just insane at times. I'm very supportive of the police and law enforcement community, and so we had a initiative here in Dallas 2 years ago in 24 called the Dallas Hero Amendments, where they collected signatures from residents for an official petition to create a change to the city charter. One of which was we need to hire more police officers, and we need to make sure that X amount of new tax revenue, not existing tax revenue, goes to funding police pensions and ensuring that we can recruit more talented, more experienced officers. And it passed in a 60-40 blue-red city. It passed because I tell people all the time, and at the end of the day, like, what do people fundamentally care about? They want to feel safe in their home, in their neighborhood, and in their cities. So they're telling us all the time they can't afford to do that, right? And then we have an awful road infrastructure here. But we have $80 million to build a practice facility, not an arena, a practice facility for a WNBA team that averages 7,000 fans. And that's only when that average is only because
free tickets.
It's not just free tickets. It's when the attendance spikes up to 20 because Caitlin Clark's in town. There is no WNBA without Caitlin Clark.
Right.
There just isn't. And the Wings have this great player. I believe she's actually from my school. I could be wrong about this, from TCU, but so they're building the franchise kind of around her. But in the meantime, here's the other thing: the Mavericks and Stars are talking to everybody about leaving Dallas. Everybody, every community in the area. Of course, they draw huge numbers of fans, right? Yes. And so where's that money going to come from, right? So like if we're spending $80 million on this WNBA team, we can't afford police. We can't, can't keep our roads, in decent shape. They're always threatening to close libraries. What are we spending $80 million on for a practice facility?
It's unbelievable for a game that nobody will watch. For a game that nobody will watch. I mean, so
high school football games get way more attendance. Way more. It's not even close.
Correct. And I'm waiting for their first trans player to be on there. When are they going to do that? As you know, 15-year-old boys beat the women's professional soccer team when what's her name was on there, Megan Rapinoe, who now, after she's retired, says she wants men to be able to play in women's sports, obviously, right? That's a sidebar. But, okay, so I'm with you 110%. I think it's a disgrace and such. In fact, Carla Mendelsohn, one of the very...
It's shocking that's even a discussion. It's that insane. Like,
Yes,
But
and
I mean,
Kara
those are the kind of
Mendelsohn.
decisions that get made in blue cities.
Yes, and Kara Mendelsohn is somebody who always has common sense on the Dallas City Council, and she said, "quote I think this is an obscene amount of money, representing common sense far north Dallas at a time when they're talking about things like closing libraries. It's pretty shocking. We would move forward with this kind of a number, and I will not be in support." Common sense from her.
Yeah, Kara is rational, as you said, and it understands business and can do math.
Right.
And there's a few of them, but the problem in Dallas, particularly with the city council, is structural. There's 14 single member districts. There's no at-large districts other than the mayor. There's nobody that has the greater interests of the city at hand, and it's a weak mayor system, strong city manager system.
Yes,
and so the bureaucrats are really in charge.
Yes.
And what they do is when they want something accomplished and they want a project in, they practice what I call salami tactics, slicing off constituencies and playing against each other.
Yes.
So like with the current arena tour they went on to evaluate new possible sites for the Mavericks, like half of the city council people weren't even invited because they know they don't need them.
Right. That's exactly right. That is a massive scandal in and of itself, to exclude them out of it. Going back to Black Lives Matter or with the crosswalks and such, this I had to hit on this with you because there's the last time I checked, the highest homicide district, the largest district, the highest homicide rate in the entire city of Dallas is what's his name? Hold on one second. Adam Bazaldua, his district. District 7, highest homicide rate. Still is, as far as you know, too, right?
It changes. We used to scorecard this and still do every month or every quarter or so. And I don't know what the current is, but I would assume that because he also has Deep Ellum, which is increasingly violent. He's always up there. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and so I find it ridiculously amusing and stupid that he's all mad that Black Lives Matter crossings are coming down, and the abounding prosperity, the not-for-profit who said this is going to hurt the community and stuff like that. To me, you should pour money into having more fathers in homes. To me, you should pour more money into promoting marriage, because that's the way out of poverty and violence and all that stuff. And it's really easy to paint a stupid sidewalk. But I find it funny also, or amusing, that Adam Bazaldua, with the highest homicide rate typically in Dallas, is advocating for these stupid things to be painted as if that's going to solve problems of violence and fatherlessness.
Well, this is the individual that I saw for hours and hours and hours at a city council meeting. It was either last year or the year before. Argue the preamble to the city charter, just trying to make it as woke as absolutely possible. That individual in particular is very, very hyper woke.
Yes.
He's actually on the right side of this city hall issue, by the way, which is surprising. But he's in, one of the districts that they don't need him. So he doesn't have anything to lose politically by, trying to protect City Hall. And so, they just spend entirely too much time on that kind of stuff in city politics in Dallas. It's not even relevant. And just another example of how, the city of Dallas routinely violates state law. And that's a subject of great discussion and contention between the city and the Attorney General's office. It was just recently announced that the Attorney General is investigating, or it may have even filed a lawsuit against the city of Dallas related to not fulfilling the requirements of those Dallas Hero amendments that we talked about.
Okay, good. Yeah.
That's another one, that whether their lack of cooperation with immigration officials, of course.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so both, and I'm glad, because we need every single freaking cop.
It's a sanctuary city at the end of the day. It's a sanctuary city. Yeah, it's not even a question.
So I've been shocked with Cuomo talking about we don't cooperate and this and that. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Look what the law says. Where's the enforcement on that to bring down the hammer on it?
It's one of those things, you have to think about the state attorney general, because we get calls like this all the time.
Yes.
We file this complaint with the attorney general over this, that, or the other thing, right? And I mean, there's only so much they can handle. And so they kind of have to pick, the bigger fights and the fights that they can win. Fortunately, some of these shenanigans going on here in Dallas are at the top of their radar because they're just so willfully violating state law in many cases.
Cesar Chavez, as I like to call Cesar Chavez. I don't believe that one morning, I know you guys covered this big time, I don't believe that one morning everybody woke up and all of a sudden announced that Cesar Chavez is bad. I don't think that just happened one morning where all of a sudden, okay, he's bad now. I think, and this is just my speculation, but I think that everybody in that circle and everybody around that circle knew how dirty, filthy the guy was, including Dolores Huerta, who kept it quiet for decades. I think, this is, again, pure speculation, but I think it's all about that legacy and the story and covered up at all aspects. And it disgusts me, and I think it's a joke that somehow they found out, oh, now he's bad. I think they all knew. What do you think?
Well, it's always interesting with the left, too, when these things happen, right?
Yes.
Because the scripting is so coordinated. You know, It immediately went from it's not about Cesar Chavez. It's about the movement.
Movement, yes.
And it's about the movement. And, and then now they want to stand. I apologize. The name of the lady that you just mentioned that was the
Dolores
one that ultimately
Huerta.
outed.
Yeah.
Dolores Huerta. Like, they want to rename all these streets after her.
No.
But it all happens simultaneously. Like, the second the news comes out, they're ready to go.
Yes.
Like, ready to go.
Yes. Thank you.
That was similar to, there was another example of that, because I study media daily. Another great example of that was the Talarico Stephen Colbert situation, where they refused to platform Jasmine Crockett because they were in the bag, of course, for Talarico, but they turned that into a narrative of, it's the Trump and the FCC and they're being fascist and blocking. It was a total lie, lie, total nonsense. And every single major lying legacy media outlet in the country, locally, turns right around and amplifies it. And what they'll do is they'll do that for 3 days straight, even when they know it's not true and that the truth is going to come out, because at that point, their base just believes it.
There's nothing
you could do to convince them otherwise. And it's like the Trump Epstein stuff. Like, there's nothing you can do to convince them otherwise, and they'll just go. They're stuck in, and they can't think rationally after that or critically.
Chris,
when the evidence is right in your face. Yes.
All right, Epstein. So we obviously have to do the same thing for Cesar Chavez, and we need we need all the files. We need to see who covered up and who knew what when. Just like with Epstein, we need to do investigations of everybody. I mean, don't we need to do, because the Democrats are so quote unquote right about Epstein, we got to do the same thing about Cesar Chavez. I mean, these are 12 and 13-year-old girls being sexually assaulted and having birthing babies. Shouldn't we do the same thing like Epstein?
Of course we should. The problem is, and this, Chris, is this is where Republicans somehow
drop the ball,
lose their will. Go back to everything that happened under the Biden administration. Nobody's been prosecuted for anything.
Yeah.
Like, nothing. Nobody. We know who some of the chief perpetrators or bad actors were in the Epstein saga. Bill Gates is one.
Yes.
Bill Clinton is one. There, the other guys that Elon's always mentioning that he knows personally.
Right.
Nothing ever happens. And I think that people are just increasingly frustrated with that as well. The problem is that, if the Trump administration, that's supposed to be the reform administration, doesn't follow through on these things, where does that leave us in a couple of years? I think we're
up the creek.
We're very vulnerable. I mean, not just politically, but
yes,
it was only this particular election that saved us from going down this incredibly dark, deep state road that we were already on. And they're just going to feel empowered further at that point. It's scary to me.
Yes, I agree, because who's going to be the next president? We don't know until we know. Dirk Nowitzki, just to throw on, naming streets after people. You might not like this, but I'm going to tell you right now, when they, my old station I was at for 15 years, they renamed it Nowitzki Way there. I said, this is the worst thing you could freaking do. And people are like, how dare you? And I said this. I said, I got one name for you, Bill Cosby. Bill freaking Cosby. Okay, so and I said, I'm not saying that Dirk Nowitzki has anything negative or nefarious in his current past or past, but you don't know nothing till you know something. And so I think my theory is you don't name anything. Stop humping people's legs. You don't name anything until after they're dead, and even after they're dead, we find out stuff. For example, thoughts on that?
I understand what you're saying. I was happen to be a Mavericks season ticket holder there in that era, and I'm a Dirk Nowitzki super fan. So
yes, of course.
I'm probably the wrong guy to drag into that conversation. but your point is well taken.
I'm the only guy because the Mavs and the Stars pulling in and out of the parking lot that I used to park in underground there at the Victory Plaza for a long time, and I would see people, and the only one I would recognize because I'm not a big sports guy in any way, shape, or form at all. So unless we're in the playoffs, so I would see people. Nowitzki would go by sometimes, of course. Then I'd be a little giddy because he's Nowitzki, but nobody else. I'm like, I don't care who that person is. I don't care if they're in a Ferrari. Whoever they are is whoever they are. Whatever.
He's a little tough to miss. Yes, exactly. Okay, let's do this. Lee Merritt, who is a bottom-dwelling race hustler. I don't know if you know this, he literally tried to get me fired like 6 or 8 years ago. He led us to sustained campaign for 2 straight weeks, national, and he did it for a week, and then he pretended he didn't do it and did it again for a whole another week. And he failed, but there's that little story about him. It was over the Botham Jean thing, and the way the mother was saying vile things about Amber Geiger, who I believe is totally innocent, as we all know. And well, I won't say answer for you, but anyways, the hatred, the horrible. That was an awful situation.
Yeah,
and actually, I mean, at one point that the family, of the victim handled it really well, and
Botham Jean's brother.
Yeah.
Botham Jean's brother is literally an example of Christianity, of Christ in the flesh. That guy was beyond beautiful and perfect. And his mother needs to learn from her son. And where's Dad?
Well, Dad's silent. And this is where, back to your original point, though, like, we're elevating people like this. And in this case, it is a victim, but not a victim of a malicious crime.
Right, exactly.
It was just a terrible, terrible, awful situation. But now we martyr these people, right?
Yeah.
And like Floyd, like they tried to do the woman
St. George Floyd. Like, St. George Floyd. Blessed be his name.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, so your point is absolutely correct there. But again, it's a political tactic. Yes. Let's martyr these individuals for this horrible niche use case political purpose and exploit it, exploit them in the process, and then use it as a hammer against our political opponents, for years and years and years. So that's one of the things they do that's insidious.
And they will, every time Amber Geiger comes up from parole, and she should never have been charged, as the Texas Ranger who investigated, who happens to be black, said there was mistake of fact, which is law in Texas, because she did not go in there knowing it was not her apartment and such. As you know, they extensively proved that neighbors people would go out, walk the dog, come back in, and walk in somebody else's apartment on a different floor and see a purse on the thing. Go, what the hell's going on here? Oh wait, I'm in the wrong apartment. So, and I said that that apartment complex should have been sued immediately. And guess what happened? The moment they got a conviction on Amber Geiger, the first thing they did was file suit against the apartment complex, because they know the truth. Who is at fault is the apartment complex for not labeling things, for confusing everybody in that whole place. But I know we don't want to relitigate all that. But unless you have a comment on that, want to get into the
that was just a really awful situation. And again, it's just a shame that those things have to be leveraged politically in that way. I mean, I guess we are in the whole George Floyd thing. And,
St. George Floyd, please. St. George Floyd. Blessed be his name.
Toxicology reports in the corner, absolutely clear. What happened?
He died from a drug overdose. Yeah.
Still people in jail. Yeah,
he died from a drug overdose. Well, the way I say it is he died from a drug overdose while in the custody of Minneapolis police, which is why he said, I can't breathe 7 times in the back of the squad before he was ever on the ground. So, absolutely.
Yeah, and imagine, like, in Minnesota, if that camera angle had not come out, it showed her literally driving into that officer, into that car, she'd be the next one.
Yes,
without a doubt.
You're exactly right. Yes, you're exactly right. Yes. Going to Lee Merritt, though, he is representing, this bottom-dwelling race hustler is now representing. And by the way, last time I checked, he still hasn't passed the Texas bar, which means he can only practice civil rights law, but he can't practice criminal law. I don't know if he ever has passed the Texas bar to this day, but that's what I heard last time. I checked. But here he is representing this woman with the Hearst police officer pulling her over. She was speeding, going 15 miles an hour over the limit. The neighborhood had already called the police multiple times saying, please, there are people speeding through this neighborhood. Children could be hit and killed. So they said, okay, we're going to do what the community wants us to do. We're community police officers in Hearst. They set up the place to tag and bag people for speeding. This woman goes 15 over. He pulls her over, and nastiness ensues. Can I play a little bit real fast? You should be able to hear it. Let me play it real fast. This is some of the video. Here it is. Here we go. Let me play this for us. Here we go.
You have your driver's license, proof of insurance with you today? Where y'all heading to this afternoon?
Home.
Coming from?
Why?
Just a question.
It's none of your business.
I'm sorry?
It's none of your business.
Oh, okay.
It's none of your business, Chris. Where you coming? None of your business. Oh, very happy person at this point. Here, let me go back.
All right, here's your copy of the citation. As far as the bills, you don't want to take it?
No.
Well, it's going to take it because it's your citation. That's your citation. That's littering. Step out of the car.
Don't
Yes,
do
ma'am.
that.
Yes, ma'am.
Off my
Step
car.
out.
I'm not stepping
Step out.
I'm not
6963.
Yes.
Step out.
I'm not
Step out.
Don't
Step out.
Don't touch
Step
me.
out.
Don't touch me.
Step it out.
I'm not stepping
Step
out
out.
shit. Call
Step
your
out.
motherfucking supervisor.
I am the supervisor.
You're not the supervisor.
Yes, I am.
Call your
I am the
supervisor.
corporal.
A
Step out.
supervisor. I'm not
Step
stepping
out.
out of nothing. Get
Step
your
out.
fucking hand off me.
Step
Get
it
your
out.
hand off me. Get your hand off me.
All right, as you know, it gets worse and worse and worse. Several officers show, and she's like, I want a supervisor. He is the highest-ranking supervisor on duty. He is a corporal, a senior corporal, which you and I are familiar with those ranks, whether it be a Dallas police officers or Hearst or any one of them. And this woman is nasty. She does litter. She's vile. And by the way, she says in here, I mean, I could play up, we don't have to sit through the whole thing. She says, I'm not afraid of you. And then today she comes out with her race-hustling attorney, Leah Merritt, and says that she was brutalized and beaten and all sorts of stuff. We all saw the video. She did this to herself. Her son, who's 15, as you report today in the Dallas Express, says repeatedly, stop, Mom, stop, Mom, stop, Mom. The kid, and you could say, what was the lesson she taught the kid? I know what the lesson was. The kid knows more than Mom. He's not listening to her because he knows she's bad. And then today with this press conference, the kid's standing there like he's standing with her in unison. What a sick thing. Talk to me on what you guys know at the Dallas Express and your thoughts on this.
No, I mean this will be exactly like the other use cases we discussed. Like they'll try to make her into a victim, and they'll try to create a racial issue where there is no racial issue at all. Right. And this is the culture that BLM brought us. As we know, BLM turned into a giant grift. It was a giant grift from day one. And we think about, I mean, that's been going on for a while now, right? Since the origins of BLM. And we've created now an entire sub-society of people who have zero respect for any form of authority, and certainly not for law enforcement. They're just outright hated. We just did a ride along with ICE not long ago.
That was great.
And
I watched that with you.
Yeah, thanks. Well, a lot of these ICE agents would tell us we're doing the exact same job for 20 years. There's nothing different about it. In fact, during the Obama administration, they were equally as aggressive in terms of trying to capture illegal criminals and send them back to their home countries. The only thing that changed was the politics and the left doing a 180, as it relates to immigration. As you know, all of them, Obama, Clinton, both Clintons, Biden, there's video after video after video of them, being very clear about the fact that we got to get illegal immigration under control. And that's before it absolutely exploded, know? And so it's politics. And it's sad because there's no going back on a lot of these things. Like once these children in particular are being conditioned to disrespect any form of authority, where does that lead us?
And they're taught that they can win when they lie. Do you remember
that's been going on for decades, as you know? Like,
do you remember that case?
So race matters.
Yes. Do you remember that case? I had this young man on, Austin. I can't remember his last name. Plano. He's now 18, but he was an 8th grader, and he had some black friends, and one black friend in particular. They came over. They were doing stupid things. They were frog hunting with BB guns. They shot each other and said, "Oh, look at this," including the young kid who's black. And then they go back, and then they're sleeping. They wake him up, and they pee a little bit in the cup, which is what stupid 13-year-olds do. It's bad. They peed in the cup a little bit and had him drink it until he figured it out. And then the next day, his mom, shortly thereafter, doxes the kid. Attacks him, says he's a racist, all this stuff. And by the grace of God, he sued. She sued first. And as you know, and he won a massive judgment for, I think, $3 million, I think it was, against not only her, but her race hustling attorney, Kim T. Cole, who's with Dominique Alexander's race hustling Next Generation Action Network. Dominique Alexander, who he's convicted of beating a little black baby boy. His black baby mama, who he won't marry but has kids with, says he beat the hell out of her in a live press conference. So he's allegedly beating a black woman, is convicted of beating a black baby boy, but does nothing about going after black men. So Kim T. Cole was sued and she lost. And I talked to this young man's attorney, Austin, I can't remember his last name, but Nix, I think it might be. And I talked to him and his attorney for an hour on my podcast, and I said, do you think secretly, because they've said they would never change a thing. I said, do you think when they're sitting at home at night after this judgment, the attorney and the mom would change their mind and wish they'd never done this? And he said, no. No, Chris. They looked at me in court and said that they're a victim. They're convinced. Talk to me about
it's cultural. It's cultural victimization, and they've gotten away with it for so long, by effectively making the real victim the aggressor. And
right.
It's part of look, the good news is I think a lot of people are just exhausted by it. Yes. And now when you see it, you're just kind of numb to it.
Right.
And certainly the labeling and the name calling of people being racist and fascist
right.
and Hitler and xenophobic, it's just like in
Hitler
one ear and out the other.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
it's just like it's because of what's going on around us with respect to whether it's crime or homelessness or a lot of the impacts of a lot of these crimes. Immigration is so palpable that it's kind of like we heard you before, but we're kind of done.
Yes.
I mean, that's the sense that I get.
So today, the Dallas Express coverage of this woman, Tanisha Thompson, entitled Tanisha, from her January 6th stop, she comes out with this press conference with Lee Merritt and says, I suffered a black eye, needed stitches, several bruises all over my body. Since that day, I've lived in constant fear. Every time I see a police officer, when she said on the body cam that we've all seen, I'm not afraid of you. So she's now afraid.
Well, you can spend all night watching YouTube videos of just this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's so silly now that that's another one that they've been trained to say, by the way. But two things. One is get your supervisor. That's one, because
yes.
they think if they create enough drama around it, they'll just
right.
be like, I'm not going to deal with it. And then number two is, if an ICE agent walks into a coffee shop and,
yes.
they're not pro immigration enforcement, they'll be like, I'm scared of your presence. These
yes.
are all things they're just kind of trained to say,
Chris, you covered that. I think it's called White Rhino Coffee, a chain here in Dallas. I was so disgusted by them. And I'm not asking you to take a stance if you don't want to on this. I was disgusted by them because they have people that said they were afraid of ICE, and then they suddenly said, no, ICE is not law enforcement. You know what I said? I said, you listen to me, I said, if your daughter is being shot and killed, I said, do you know who went in and saved those kids, the last remaining kids, at the border there? What was the massacre? What's it called? The shooting, the school shooting. The names, what I'm talking about. And it'll come to us both in a second. I said, you know who saved those frickin' kids who went in and shot and killed that son of a bee? It was BORTAC, Border Patrol. And Border Patrol and ICE saved them when nobody else would. So I'm telling you right now, if some guy's shooting at you or robbing a bank and the ICE officer's nearby, he will shoot that bleepity bleep and save you. And you will want that. It makes me so disgusted.
Chris,
they said, well, they're not law enforcement.
Right. On the ICE capture, that I went on, the ride along,
yes,
the target was a convicted murderer in
yes.
El Salvador.
Yes.
And MS-13 gang member and the subject of multiple disappearances.
Wow.
And we took him off the street. They took him off the street. I just watched, of course. But that's not law enforcement. That's not protecting your community. And, one of the things I learned when we were investigating that story, we really tried to come at it, from both angles. We interviewed protesters, other folks, to get their perspective, because the truth is just so muddied with all the narrative, is just that there are still a staggering number of criminals. Perhaps they didn't even commit crimes in the United States, but a staggering number of criminals from other countries that are here illegally. And if that's not law enforcement removing those individuals from our society, I don't know what is.
Amen. It was Uvalde. I couldn't remember it. I had to look it up real fast, which is ridiculous, but we're both on the fly here. By the way, I'm real proud of, as you guys report today, Hearst Police Chief Billy Keatle says the video clip circulating on social media of that this fake allegations of brutality. The video clips circulating on social media have misrepresented our officer and misled some in our community. Transparency matters. Corporal Morgan acted in full accordance. He's got his freaking cops' backs, and that's what matters. Corporal Morgan acted in full accordance with the law and with our department policies. You guys, quoting this today. And the department stands firmly behind his actions. After reviewing all evidence submitted, the Tarrant County DA's office accepted the charge of resisting arrest against entitled Tanisha Thompson. And I could not be happier to see that. And they better prosecute her to the fullest extent on that, because she clearly did resist arrest.
Yeah, I mean, if you're complaining about getting hurt, how about don't resist arrest and fight the police?
And that's the one thing I say to people, and I've said this for years. I'm from a multi-generational law enforcement family, and Chicago police officers, and there's one person that's in charge when there's a stop, and it ain't Tanisha. It's the cop. Cop could be wrong. Cop could be a jerk. Doesn't matter. And that bottom dweller, racial hustler attorney Lee Merritt was saying. Somebody asked him. David Sentendry from Fox 4 asked him today or yesterday in the news. He says, "What do you tell your clients about whether they should throw a ticket out of the window?" And he said, "Well, I always advise that you shouldn't be, resisting or doing stuff." He had to tell the truth when he was asked a good question by somebody who actually had a good question. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One more thing on two things. Talarico. I literally think I cannot wait to hear your thoughts on this. I literally think Talarico is actually going to be easier to beat than Jazzy. I used to think otherwise, and I think because when you have 2.5 million heads of cattle on any given moment in the Texas Panhandle waiting to be eaten by you and me and others, I think it's awesome that he doesn't eat meat, that does eat meat, and all this. I love it. So, and then 6 genders, God's non-binary, all these abomination things he says. And I love little trans kids and everything. I think this guy's the gift that will keep on giving, and I think he's going to be easier to beat. Now, I really want to know what you think, because you have great acumen on politics.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with a lot of them. There's, of course, at some point in the future, a Democrat will win a statewide race in Texas again.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened, as you know, since the mid-90s. This isn't going to be it. It's not going to be one of these candidates. And what they've done with Talarico, of course, is precisely what, and when I say they, the Democrats, successfully did in Virginia, which is find a white guy.
Yes.
Who looks really white. I call him woke Opie.
Here's a harmless-looking little feller who's white. Here you go.
Yeah, and attempt to run him out of as a moderate. And the problem these days is the internet.
Yes.
What they like, no politician, they just love attention. They want all these followers, etc. And in the case of both Jasmine, and Talarico, the video record is just extensive and so out of touch with Texas social and political values.
We lost you, brother. I'll text him real fast. Tell him we lost him on his signal. I'll just let him know we lost him. Here we go. Just lost you. Please reconnect. We can finish it. Oh, there he is. You're back. You're back from the dead.
I don't think I can hear you though.
Okay. All right. You want to reconnect? All right. I'll just tell you to reconnect. All right. Here we go. Hold on. Here we go. Reconnect. If you can reconnect. All right. We're going to stand by for him to reconnect. Yeah, he just reconnected. I'll take it back to me. Oh, you're back? Okay. We're going to pop him back on. Welcome to live podcasting. It is what it is, y'all. Continuing in just a second. He's going to fix that up. And I got a few more questions with him. I'm going to hit up CPAC.
I think I got
there
you
you
again.
are. I got you.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened there.
Don't worry about it. I'll wrap it up shortly because, you've been very generous with your time. Very generous, and I appreciate it.
Well, just finishing off that last thought about Talarico and Crockett, like they're the fringe of the fringe, and their statements been very public, of course, and there's a lot of them. And I think if they ever do find a legitimate moderate Democrat, that might be a different discussion, but it's not going to be this year, and it's not one of these two, or Talarico in this case.
Two things. I don't think a black person's going to vote for this clown at all. between Jazzy being
No,
spurned by.
Go ahead. Well, because I think we have different reasons. But go ahead.
Interesting. Okay, I think that first of all, his abominations on what he says about God. There are many, many, many black people who love Jesus but are woke or one of my closest dear friends from college. This says it all, and we're very, very close lately. And he's a photographer for CBS in Chicago. And I saw him recently, and I love him dearly. When OJ was found innocent, we were in college. And we were both journalists, and he was my photographer on my reporting and stuff. And he cheered, and I screamed no. And on the way home back to our dorms, we were in the same dorm room. I ended up saying I can't do. We had to separate on the way home. But I love him like a brother, and always will. And I mean, he's an example, and he loves God. We talk about I'm reading a book. We're reading a book together, like Oprah's book club, about Jesus and stuff. So,
I think
he won't vote my way.
On the right issue. Yeah, and I think he's on the right issue there. The vote that he's going to lose, I suspect, is the African American vote or the black vote and the Hispanic vote. And for the reasons you describe it, I don't know if you saw the Stephen A. Smith interview a few weeks ago.
I did not.
When he was asked about why black voters won't accept Pete Buttigieg as a presidential candidate. It's because
Pete Buttigieg. Yeah.
Yeah. And Stephen A. Smith, it was, he was clear, they're like, just sexuality. And,
right.
and
Absolutely.
I'm not saying Talarico's, I'm not assigning any sexuality to him, but it's ambiguous. And there's some real questions that have to be answered there. A lot of people are reporting that, in fact, he's homosexual. I don't know that's for me not a disqualifying, element for a candidate. I spent an entire day a couple weeks ago with Besant, who was just, I think, probably, the best Treasury Secretary we've had in a very long time.
Yeah, yeah.
But it is fair to paint it in electoral terms and the impact, to that ticket and that party. And there's questions there.
Absolutely. So, number one, if he is gay, and if that does come out, he's going to have to answer that when we finally have a choice between Paxton and Cornyn. One of them wins. Then all the heat will be on him. All these videos will be a spotlight, and people are going to try to flush out an answer. I think you're absolutely right. Okay, let's go.
We've been pursuing a question since he was running in the primary, against Crockett, and because she publicly supports reparations. We wanted to know what he thought.
Yes.
They are running from us. They do not want to answer that question.
Yeah, why not? Oh my gosh, he's super woke. How could he not support reparations? We need our Texas tax dollars to go to reparations for people who aren't even, weren't affected by anything. Yeah, exactly right. I mean,
we put a lot of public pressure on his team and his comms director. Radio silence.
You guys were the ones, for everybody watching Dallas Express, you're the CEO of Dallas Express. You guys were the ones who exposed the groundbreaking story, which you should have won a Pulitzer for. We've talked about this. Kay Granger hiding out in a nursing home, and you exposed that. So, I mean, if anybody could get this, it'd be you guys to find out what's really going on with
There's a lot of people... sorry.
No, that's okay. Mine always fall out of I'm always pushing mine back in while I'm talking on the,
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Chris. That was a huge story, a global story. But there's a lot of people trying to solve that particular mystery. I mean, I don't know why I just can't be. I just don't know why I can't be public about it, like Secretary Besant. Either way, by the way,
Rick Grinnell. Rick Grinnell was considering running for governor of California. Rick Grinnell was a Trump cabinet appointee on the first Trump won. And I love how they say he's a homophobe or he's hates gays, and it's like, dude, he's the only person putting openly gay people in his cabinet compared to the Democrats.
Well, and then Woke Opie has this really interesting thing that I'm sure you saw this story, like his personal social media accounts fall like all these OnlyFans accounts and
strippers.
Pornographic, and strippers, and then there's a faction of people who are like, that was a cover.
Absolutely.
I don't know, but what I do know.
How about this? What
I do know is no one knows. Like if you Google it and you just basically Google what his sexuality is.
James Talarico gay?
No, it literally says like nobody knows. Nobody knows.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna do this right now.
Do it.
Hold on. Here we go. This is here we go. Let me go right to here we go. Let's see.
It'd be the AI response, I believe.
Okay. Is James Talarico gay? Question mark. Here we go. Let's see. Where's my little AI response? Hold on. Is AI not allowed to answer it on DuckDuckGo? Let me go.
No,
to,
yeah,
Google?
we've done this ourselves. So
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Google. Okay. I'll check it real fast. I mean, you already did it, but let's just do a little AI's comment. It's thinking. Based on available information as of March 2026, State Representative U.S. candidate James Talarico has not publicly identified as gay. So we don't know anything. All right.
Yeah, they've changed this actually recently, or it's a different response because it used to literally say like it's unclear and there's no public confirmation either way.
It's like alien sightings. We don't know for sure.
It didn't say no though.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly right.
And again, this is only important in the electoral context, right?
Yes.
Like if we're going to have like an honest handicapping,
that's a great point.
Let's have a public conversation, just like Stephen A. Smith did about why Pete Buttigieg's a problem for blacks, and the same will be true for many Hispanics, particularly males.
You can't hide who you are if you want us to vote for you for U.S. Senate.
I think that's the real issue, right? Like, I've been in elected office. I ran a huge federal race. Like everything about you have to it's just part of the deal. Like you have to open yourself up completely, and just be completely transparent about who you are, what your family, everything. There's just no other way to do it.
So two more quick things here for you. Number one, Paxton versus Cornyn. I want Paxton be open and upfront about that. And for people who, including my pastor, I almost never disagree with Dr. Jeffers. He's a friend and a guest on my show quite often, but he is one of those pastors that came out and support Cornyn. But I'm going to quote him, Dr. Jeffers. He says about Trump, we don't vote for him. I wouldn't vote for him to be my Sunday school teacher, obviously. But his policies align with our values, our biblical values, the most. And to me, 120%, Ken Paxton's going to vote with biblical values, regardless of his personal life and what he's done that's wrong, or all sorts of stuff. And Cornyn coming out and being so nasty with his attacks on Paxton is horrible to me. It is so off-putting. Cornyn's never been a bottom dweller that I'm aware of, but now he's being a bottom dweller and going there because he's desperate. What do you think? Handicap the race for me, and where do you think this is going to head for the runoff?
And by the way, I always tell people that we have to stop, idolizing candidates, rock stars, athletes, whatever. Right? I mean, we're not electing these people, to be leaders in that sense. I know that the argument, of course, that it has that effect. We influence children, all sorts of other things, right? But at the end of the day, this is politics. And in politics, you should be voting for one thing and one thing only. Which candidate do you believe either has or can deliver the political outcomes that matter to you individually, whatever your ideology is, right? That should be the criteria.
That's it.
And we're in a post moralism world in that sense. I mean, that all ended with Bill Clinton. I mean, when you're literally getting Hummers in the White House from interns, think about that in a Jeffrey Epstein context. Think about that. And the fact that, people just haven't burned them to the stake. And so that's just over. And Trump's part of that too. He's had a complicated personal life. A lot of these ultra wealthy guys do. But we're all human, and everybody's got something at the end of the day. Who's
going to have the best policies?
Yeah, that's it. That matter to you. The political outcomes that matter to you is where you should vote. In terms of handicapping the race, if John Cornyn didn't have tenfold the amount of money available to him, that he does, I would tell you that historically in Texas, conservatives, and I don't think anybody would argue that from a political record point of view, that Ken Paxton's far more conservative than John Cornyn.
Correct.
The conservatives and challengers win runoffs. That's how Ted Cruz got elected. I could give you examples here locally. Sheriff Bill Wabert in Tarrant County. Say that there's just example after example after example. But the money in this case is real. And for whatever reason, DC lobbyists, the PAC that actually called it Incumbent Protection PAC, is the one that was used against me in the House, the Congressional Leadership Fund. These monies that they collect through the candidates tithing through their own fundraising go into this bucket, and they're supposed to be used to, if they get a credible Democratic challenge in November.
Right.
But in this case, they're being used here against a Republican challenger in a primary. And so it's just it's an overwhelming amount of money. And I think, from my point of view, take Cornyn and Paxton out of it individually, as candidates, like I find that gross. Like to spend $100 million on a Senate race, we've just lost our way so terribly there as it relates to the influence of the money. And I'll just wrap it up, Kristen. I think without that money, it's not close. And again, that's not me expressing my preference for either candidate. We don't endorse candidates. I bet without that overwhelming difference in the money, it's not close.
Okay, so you think that it's wouldn't be close at all except for the money. Wasn't it like $69 million to $4 million on the first round here?
We've seen numbers as high as a total of $100 million committed. In the first round, right? I believe the Attorney General had like $4 million, and it was just crazy amount of money on Cornyn's side. And a lot of people expected in that first round for Paxton to perform better by 5 to 10 points, and of course it was virtual tie. Cornyn kind of eked it out there, but again, in a primary runoff in Texas, those are your most engaged voters. Those are the voters that are also the most educated. Most informed is what we call it, right? They're informed voters. Okay. And it'd be surprising, I think, if Cornyn pulls it off, but it's not impossible. Again, because money matters.
All that money, Chris, and Cornyn only eked it out by 1.2%. That is stunning. All that money, you just got 1.2%.
But you either look at that one of two ways, right? Which is, without that money, we're still in a runoff probably, but is it in terms of how it impacts the runoff? It'll come down to the messaging. It'll come down to the messaging, and it will come down to who kind of works hardest for it in the field. And of course, we're right in the middle of it. And so we'll see. I if I had to bet, I think I'd still bet on Paxton winning this thing. But again, the one thing I can't account for is just the influence of just that overwhelming difference in fundraising. Yeah.
All right, CPAC. You're going to be going this evening. What are you looking forward to over at CPAC? And there's talk about division in the Republican Party and stuff. What are you looking forward to with CPAC? And what do you think about division, supposedly, or not?
CPAC, it's more about just kind of feeling the vibe out that year, in the scene, and whether or not it's. I think in the last couple of years, it's fair to say that it hasn't been as well attended as in the past. And of course, to your point, the most interesting thing to watch is this crazy, factionalized situation we have in the party now, particularly around issues like Israel. And it does come down to personalities. So it's kind of back to that same theme that I was talking about, where we got to get the personalities out of the mix and focus on issues. And of course, it's the Israel stuff that's driving a lot of this. And I always say Israel, like H-1B is an issue, is a nuanced, complicated issue. And I hate when people try to put you on one side of the fence or the other, because two things can be true at once, right?
Yes.
We need to protect Israel. Israel is our ally. Hamas is bad. Iran is bad.
Yes.
Does Israel have an outsized influence on American politics and politicians? Yes. Two things can be true at once. But some of these people just take it to the extreme.
Yes, they do.
Our government has been fully co-opted, by Israel, and
complete lie.
It's again, there's fairness to both arguments, but both can be true at the same time.
Okay. And then you guys did miss. We'll hold off on the casino cash story you guys did, which is great. For lack of time, I'm sure you got to get going for CPAC. But you did miss one story today in the Dallas Express, because today the Dallas Morning News scooped you as they are sharing information on how you can participate in a No Kings protest.
The Star Telegram does that too. Anytime there's like these protests, they literally are advertising to people like how to get involved and participate. That's how bad it is. Yeah.
Here's the directions. Here's a GoFundMe. Here's how you can go. Yeah. Here's where printed signs are. Here's how you can get bussed in. Listen, this has been fantastic, and it's. I look forward to having you on again. Appreciate you very much, Chris Putnam, Dallas Express CEO. Everybody should be using the Dallas Express for the news and subscribing, like many of my good friends.
DallasExpress.com.
Yep. Amen.
DallasExpress.com, and it's free, no paywalls, and there's a free app as well.
I appreciate you very much, and I appreciate what you guys do.
Thanks,
You're a
Chris.
tremendous asset. We'll talk soon, brother. All right, thank you very much.
All
There
right,
he
take
goes.
care.
Chris Putnam, appreciates you, and off he goes to CPAC. This has been awesome. I've enjoyed it very much. My buddy Randy Martin can't make it this time, so we'll do it again next week with him on tax advice. There's still time for your taxes. A couple other quick things. Drunk driver pleads guilty to manslaughter in Texas cop's death. This woman has pled guilty to killing Sergeant Billy Randolph, Fort Worth police officer, for many, many years. He's a hero. And this was in August of 2024. Randolph was 56 years old, a 29-year veteran of the Fort Worth Police Department, standing on the ramp from Interstate 35 W and to Sycamore School Road when a 2020 Nissan Versa, driving the wrong way, drunken driver plowed into him. This woman, her attorney said this today, and it's just, or yesterday, as this was being adjudicated, it was an accident. It is not an accident when you choose to drink and drive. It is a crime. It is like playing Russian roulette, like standing in the middle of the highway with a loaded revolver and shooting off, hoping you don't hit somebody. Drunken driving is not an accident when you hit somebody and kill them, or you hit somebody while you're drunk. It is a crash. To say it's an accident is to excuse what you did. It is a crash because you're drunk, driving the wrong way. Her defense attorney, this was an accident. She did not mean to do this. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And you killed the cop. She has a prior as well for shooting her girlfriend in 2023 on probation at the time of the crash. At that point, on that case, she pleaded guilty to ag assault with a deadly weapon. Ag assault with a deadly weapon is a precursor to murder. That's the last charge you can get before you kill somebody. It's the highest crime before murder. So there's that. Also, Frisco voters have to choose for the May 2nd elections for Frisco, mayor, city council, school board. And one venue is going to be held at the Islamic Center of Frisco, and the other is going to be held at it's called the Elevate Life Church. And 2 people are going to be at the Elevate Life Church, and the rest are going to the Islamic Center's Forum. 16 candidates on the ballot have confirmed their attendance, and only 2 will be going to the church instead of the mosque. And I don't live in Frisco, but if I did, I would vote for those 2 people. I'll tell you that right now. That would be the 2 people that are going is mayoral candidate Rod Vilhauer and Matt Chalmers will attend the forum at the church. I would vote for Rod Vilhauer and Matt Chalmers because they're going to the church, not the mosque. That's just a personal thing that I strongly stand by. I wouldn't want to vote for anybody else that says, I'm going to the mosque, not the church. Values, beliefs, assimilation. ICE is being attacked all the time, vilified. But look at this. An ICE agent today saved the life of a choking 1-year-old child at JFK Airport. So, no, he's not killing people. He's saving lives to the Democrats. Republicans today are strategizing on pushing the White House to declare a national emergency to pay the TSA agents, the National Emergency Act. I think that would be brilliant and awesome. I hope it happens. Here's what we got. Salina Airbnb house party turns chaotic. This is from the Dallas Express. Turns chaotic. 500 to 800 teens, gunshots, and arrest. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is on an 18-acre, $7.6 million property listed by Collin County Appraisal District. You can have the most wealthy neighborhood, the most wealthiest house, West Plano, Salina, wherever you want to be, and you are not immune from people doing Airbnb, VRBO, and thugs showing up at your house or next in your neighborhood. I am strongly against them. I never stay at one. I never use one. I never want to, and I never will. And I don't want them taking up our house inventory, and I don't want to live next to one of them, period. Ted Danson admits he can be a D-word despite his nice guy reputation. He said that during a podcast. My go-to is nice guy. My go-to is wanting to be nurturing and loving and kind and all that stuff. But I am a D-word, he says. Well, sir, you are a very liberal person, and like all the liberals that live by all of us with their hate has no home here signs are lying. We all have hate in our heart. God is the way to not have that hatred in your heart, to let go and let him take over. So hate does have a home in every house. Only liberals put up a sign thinking that virtue signal somehow protects them. Cocaine sharks! Cocaine sharks found cruising the Caribbean. Cocaine bear, move over. Brazilian scientists have discovered traces of nose candy, caffeine, and painkillers in sharks swimming the waters around the Bahamas. These blowfish, quote unquote, ha ha ha, aren't getting hooked on purpose. It's the fallout from uptick in marine pollutants, per a jaw-calyptic study published by the Environmental Pollution. So there are cocaine sharks in the Bahamas. Wow. This has been a great episode. I really enjoyed having Chris Putnam on from the Dallas Express. They're the first website I go to every day when I do my prep for the right reasons. All right, y'all. I will see you tomorrow. This show also, you need to know, has been brought to you by... Oh, let's play one more thing. One more thing. You have to see this. This was a video put up by Ted Cruz. You have to watch this in regards to Talarico. Watch this.
They, them, energy.
God is non-binary.
They, them, energy.
Our trans community needs abortion care too.
They, them, energy.
Something that you love.
I love the trans children who showed up yesterday at the state capitol.
They, them, energy.
Modern science obviously recognizes that there are many more than two biological sexes. In fact, there are 6.
They, them, energy. They, them, energy. They, them, energy.
Oh, don't you love that? I want to play that every show. This is so awesome. This show is brought to you by IRSprob.com. That's IRSprob.com, helping good people with IRS problems, specializing in IRS controversy, IRS audits, and tax planning strategies. He's my CPA of 9 years. Use him, y'all.